Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. My name is Jackson Mummy, and each week we'll be bringing you updated information about the bar exam and what you need to do in order to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. Ready to get started? Let's jump to it. Hey everybody, welcome. Today is Wednesday, May 24th. We are back from Bootcamp, and I am surrounded by a couple of boot campers here, the coaches, June and Tracy. And Amanda, you're on the call with us today as well. Glad to have you. So we're going to get at it. And I see some boot campers that are here on the call. Hi, boot campers. We're glad to have all of you here as well. And everybody that's on the call. Today, we're going to be bringing you up to date on some bar exam news. We've got some interesting news from around the country. We're also going to wrap up some results from the last remaining couple of states that reported out of the February exam. And then we're going to take student questions. It's been a relatively quiet week, obviously, in that term, because we've been doing boot camp. We're going to tell you a little bit more about that in a few minutes. I wanted to talk about something that we told our boot campers about, but now I want to make an announcement to everybody. Our partners at Learning Strategies have been working to develop an app in which they can put their paraliminals and their coaching in one place. And they've got about 75 individual paraliminal recordings. Those individual recordings cost about $30 a piece. And we had negotiated a set of 15 or 16 of those curated for the bar exam. And we were charging considerably less, but still fairly expensive to get all of those. Well, Learning Strategies is about to release to the general public next month a new product called Mind Tracks. And the URL for this is mindtrx.com. Mind Tracks is an app that contains all 75 paraliminals, plus coaching sessions, plus 5 or 6 full-length coaching programs that Paul Sheely has done. And the whole app costs $99 a year, which is awesome, because that means you can get access to everything, not just our curated stuff, for a fraction of the cost. Now, if you don't want to keep it after a year, get rid of it. But virtually everybody I know that uses paraliminals stays with them. They become a great tool. I use the paraliminals 2 or 3 times a day typically. And I think Mind Tracks is fabulous. I've got the app. I know that we've got some of the boot campers registered for Mind Tracks. And if you register for Mind Tracks, the only thing we ask is that you let us know. Just drop us an email or shoot us a text or a note. Learning Strategies is trying to match up which of our students are using it. They don't necessarily know, and so they're asking me to keep track of that. As one of the reasons for letting us know is that as we go forward, our hope is that we'll be able to add some things that are unique to our students onto the app, but we got to know who's there and how many are using it. Absolutely. The paraliminals are just incredible. I love them. June, you're our mindset expert. Paraliminals make a difference, don't they?
I do, especially if you're having a moment of anxiety or overwhelm or just feeling really anxious. Popping one in and even just listening for a few minutes can really help bring you back to a more even keel. And also, like, I know a lot of our students aren't sleeping good. There's paraliminals that will help you sleep and you'll be out. Put them in, you've fallen asleep with them in your ears. And yes, I really do think the paraliminals are good. And there's a trick, you can switch the voice, because certain voices just don't connect with certain people. And I like the female voice best. And so that's what I switched to and works for me. But Jackson uses them daily, like in our everyday life. I use them and they're very helpful for a quick turnaround. They really do help you turn things around.
Yeah. So if you haven't gone to mindtrx.com, mindtrx.com, go ahead and check it out. It is not publicly available. It's available to anybody that's got that website, and this pricing is great. I suspect they're going to raise the price pretty quickly. So jump on there for $99 a year. That's crazy. That's 3 paraliminals and you're getting 77 or something. Check that out for sure. Okay, let's swing around to talk a little bit about the last set of results that we've got in the country. They're now all in, as far as I know, and continued the same pattern we saw everywhere. We had results in Georgia, New Jersey, and Arizona. They continue to be pretty sad results. In Georgia, the overall pass rate was 49%. That was better than a lot of places. 66% pass rate for first-time takers, but only a 37% pass rate for repeaters. Now that's better than some jurisdictions. There are about 500 takers in Georgia. So that is always the last big jurisdiction to report, and 37% repeat taker is better than we saw in a lot of jurisdictions, but certainly not an exciting number. In New Jersey, we had about the same number of bar takers, about 500, but the pass rates were very different. 33% overall, 43% first-time takers, 29% for repeaters. New Jersey is a UBE jurisdiction. That was an interesting result. And then Arizona, also a UBE jurisdiction, had 230 takers, and they had a 41% overall pass rate, 60% first time, 23% repeater. When you see those numbers, it just continued the trend that we saw everywhere, which is you can't take the bar exam lightly. Amanda, you watch this pretty carefully now. What's your takeaway from the tracking of the numbers across the country?
Yeah, again, we are continuing to see numbers that we're unsatisfied with as professionals in this field.
Yeah.
We want to raise the level of our tools that we're putting out for you all to have, right? And what we bring here at CBR. And so we're not taking it lightly, right? We're collaborating and trying to create more avenues for you all to study, to hold yourselves accountable, to hold each other accountable. So you can't take it lightly either, right? All the people who sat for the bar are smart, intelligent. They all got through law school, or most of them, I assume, are, but they still didn't get that passing score, and that's okay. But I think, just like Jackson says, really have to give it our all, focus, and bring the time and commitment to this work that we're doing.
Yeah, people have said, why are you so discouraging about these numbers? Well, the numbers are the numbers. We can't hide them. I am excited for every student that we help get past these numbers. I just did an interview with a New York UBE student. He had taken the bar exam. This was his 8th try, and he went from a 261 to a 288. That's a good enough number to be anywhere in the country. And we've got his interview coming out later this week. But I think the point is that if you persevere, if you do the things we ask, you're going to get those scores in spite of the results that we're seeing. Over Bootcamp weekend, we had guest speakers who are former boot campers who passed the exam in February of 2023. And the phrase that everybody kept saying in those interviews, trust the process. And when you trust the process, then the numbers don't really matter because it's your journey and you can pass. And I think that's what Amanda's saying as well, that we're taking this seriously. We are doing everything we can to give you every advantage we can against this tide of numbers. And so when you see the numbers of 37% repeat taker rate or 29% in New Jersey, those are the numbers, but they don't have to be your result by any means. And so February exams are tough. The exam is not harder and the scoring is not harder, but the mix of students is tougher. And so we get these lower rates. So I think we just have to put the February exam in the books. We had lots of wins, lots of victories across the country. There are some amazing success stories. We've shared some of them with you. One of the challenges that we face is that not everybody that has success wants to go and do an interview, right? Not everybody wants to tell you the struggle that they've had. So I'm very appreciative to those former students who are willing to share their story, but I can tell you there are far more stories we don't get to tell you that are pretty inspiring, people that have done extraordinary things. And I think for us as coaches, that's very rewarding, but it's also frustrating, isn't it? You know, it was just like, oh man, would you just tell your story? Would you just come on and tell your story? But not everybody does. So anyway, any other thoughts about the results? I'm actually happy to not have to talk about results after today for a while. Will it be better in July? A little, but probably not a lot. But that doesn't matter. What matters is what you do. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's
Go ahead.
important to remember on these numbers that they're showing pass rates. Of these 495 takers in Georgia, for example, 37% of the repeat takers passed the bar. And there's no reason in the world why you can't be one of that 37%. That's 1 out of 3. And you have to assume that many people who take the bar are not prepared to take the bar the day they go in. They haven't done their work. They have maybe relied on what they learned in law school or what they got out of a big box stack of outlines, but they haven't had the type of personal attention that you get here. I think when you're looking forward to the July bar, the attitude that you need to have is, I'm going to be one of those that shows up in the pass rate for these statistics, not someone who is left out.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I know we've got people on the call today taking the exam in February of 2024. We've got people that are just starting their studies for July. Everybody's on their own journey, but the point of the journey is to get you over the line, and that's what we're here to do. So feel free to call on us and let us help you with the various tools and products that we offer. All right, a couple of other general bar exam notes, some oddities, if you will. One is in the District of Columbia, they have announced that for July of 2023, all applicants will be required to wear masks both days of the exam. Now, this is the only jurisdiction, to my knowledge, in the country that's requiring masks. And it was an interesting announcement to come when it did. Here's my take on this. If we go back 5 years ago, DC was a very small bar exam jurisdiction, a couple hundred takers in February, maybe 300 or 400 in July. And they have a relatively small bar staff. We started promoting the DC bar because I think it was really a great place to take the test. I'm a little biased coming out of DC myself, but I thought it was a good place. It's fascinating to me how we'll talk about things here and then suddenly I'll see it showing up in a variety of other places. But that message about DC got amplified. And now the DC bar is picking up routinely several hundred more applicants than they had before. I think the mask requirement actually is not about health and safety foremost, although it certainly has that impact. I think it's actually a way to discourage people from sitting in DC for the UBE. In other words, go to New Jersey, go to New York, go to Maryland, but don't sit in our jurisdiction. Because here's the reality. If I have to wear a mask for 12 hours while I'm testing to take the UBE in DC, or I can go to Maryland, for example, take the exact same test and not have to wear a mask, I might want to go to Maryland or anywhere else for that matter. I don't know. I mean, that's speculation on my part. It could be that they're just really concerned about your health, but considering the small number of people I see wearing masks anywhere in the world, it seemed like an odd thing. I don't know, Tracy or Amanda, you have any comment about this? It's a weird story.
Yeah,
they're both shaking their head. Yeah,
it's interesting.
yeah.
It's just interesting. Like, never know what the motivation is to do certain things. And we saw this with New York, right, about limiting the repeat takers, but then they opened it back up again. It's very hard to tell the reasons why, or if maybe there's different reasons why, but there are unintended consequences. So we don't really know.
Yeah, and one thing I would say is if you are taking the bar exam in DC in July, start practicing every day with a mask on. Because one of the things we learned over COVID was that it was very uncomfortable for people to sit in a room or to be doing anything with a mask on for 6 hours a day. If you're not used to wearing one of those masks for 6 hours a day, everybody thinks back to their COVID experience, it can be challenging. And so you might as well start practicing and getting used to it. Because what they're saying is you're not going to be allowed to take the mask off at all from the time you enter the testing site until you leave the testing site. You must have the mask on. Wild. I mean, I don't know. We'll see if anybody else does it, but I think that's really what's going on in DC. Interesting. We also have news out of California, of course. As some of you may know, in 2025, 2026, the National Conference of Bar Examiners are going to be writing something called the Next Generation Bar Exam. And we've been working on that and working with them. And I think it's going to be an interesting change. That change will affect for sure all of the UBE states or states that choose to stay in the UBE. New York, Texas may not stay in the UBE. That's an interesting side note. We'll see what happens there. But California, Florida, and Georgia are not in the UBE right now. And it looks like those three states are probably going to stay with their own exam. The problem is the national conference after 2026 or so, we don't have an exact date, will stop writing the second day, the multi-state bar exam, the MBE. So what do the states do? Because they need another component. It looks like California will probably not write multiple choice questions, but just have an expanded essay and performance test part of the exam. We think in Florida, they will stay with their own Florida multiple choice because they love their multiple choice. Although I have to tell you, it's the most god-awful set of questions I've ever seen. But it's likely that they will write a day of just Florida multiple choice. Georgia, we don't know what they're going to do yet. In any event, California has publicly announced that they are not going to take the next generation bar exam. The Supreme Court of California has to approve that, but it seems like that's going to happen. So you're going to see a real power struggle going on. California's the big daddy. They've got the most number of bar takers in the country. And I think it's a loss for the NCBE to not have the California exam in their fold. New York is making noises that they may drop out of the UBE for the same reason. So anyway, doesn't impact anybody that's watching this call today, most likely, but it's something that's out on the horizon. And for those of us in bar review, it's an interesting time. So I just wanted to update you on that. And then along the same lines, we had a very interesting op-ed piece published in the Wall Street Journal last week on Friday. Alabama Supreme Court Justice Jay Mitchell wrote an op-ed in which he expressed concerns about the proposed change to the UBE, this next generation exam. And he said, and I'm quoting here, due to the new test's commitment to ensure that diversity, fairness, and inclusion pervade test products and services. Justice Mitchell believes in this op-ed that the bar exam is being watered down by the next generation exam for these inclusive skills, and that it should continue to be a rigorous test of law. I think he means memorization is what he's talking about, and just reciting rules. I'm not going to go down the path of whether or not it's woke or not, or whether he's right or not about that part of it. But I do want to just get a comment here from Amanda and from Tracy about whether or not this idea that the bar exam in its present iteration is testing real skills or something different, because his position is maybe the UBE isn't doing what it should be doing and we're not testing the right things. And then he ends up wanting to go back old school. Amanda, I know this is in your wheelhouse.
I was able to scan it as we first started talking.
Yeah.
I've taken the bar exam twice now, once in New York, not with CBR, a long time ago, before I knew about CBR. Wish I had CBR then.
Yeah.
And then another time with CBR many years later. And, how I was prepared traditionally for the bar exam as an attorney, right, as a member of the bar, I don't think that prepared me to be an attorney, right, or measured the skills that my firm values in me. So I think I could say that from my limited perspective. Interestingly enough, I think the way that we prepare at CBR, I have applied a lot more skills I learned in my short time with CBR as a student, my 12 weeks, 10 weeks that I was here at my firm, right? I talk about how I still use mind mapping and even just the mindset of the kind of person I became. So I know it seems like I'm talking so highly about CBR, but really I hope for the next generation is that we find a better path forward that does measure the competencies that we want in attorneys and is a process that doesn't leave them depleted, defeated, and without a means of entry to the licensure, right? But leaves them fulfilled, confident, and well trained and well equipped to go forward. I think that ultimately is what we are all seeking. And I know at the end of the article, Justice Mitchell did say that a wider range of people like judges, lawyers, and law school deans should weigh in. I think he's saying weigh in not to adopt this or not to rush, but My why, as June knows, when I was taking this exam the second time, was because now that I am a member of the Massachusetts bar, I can say things, right, that take responsibility for the bar and what it purports to be, and the fact that the states do adopt the NCBE if they want to. And I think that's really powerful for all you here. Your input is needed on the other side when you get there, right? So that's my
Usually,
5 cents for what it's worth and what I'm
okay.
hopeful for the future about. Like you said, Jackson, without getting into who's right and who's wrong and what the test purports to measure.
Yeah, interesting. Tracy, you've been a sitting judge for 30 years, watching lawyers and litigants. The bar exam, we've never pretended that the bar exam really prepared people to practice law, but clearly there are changes. The exam is different today than it was when you and I took it. There are changes coming. What's your reaction when you see this kind of discussion going on?
I'm glad that the op-ed article is out because I think that the more that people are talking about it, the better it's going to be, especially professionals in our vocation. I may not agree with what he said, but I'm glad that it's out there and that you brought it up today, frankly. Here's what I've seen. I've been involved with you all is that this course does more to prepare people how to practice law than anything that I've ever seen. Just the idea of using FLA for the essays, for example, is a great way to take that forward into your law practice. It's so much clearer, it's so much easier to read. If I had read briefs coming in and motions that were in FLA, I would have saved myself a lot of gray hairs on the bench instead of the rambling messes that I got every day of the week. So I think that's important. The emphasis that you're putting on performance tests, and there's probably likely going to be a workshop on how to do performance tests. Amanda's wanting to do that and apparently killed that on her own bar exam. So I think there's some workshops here that really matter. I think the mind mapping workshop and the time management, the how to write in the first place is helping people in their professional competency. And that's what I would like to see the bar exam morph into is professional competency.
Thank you both. I think it's worth noting that our approach has always been to avoid memorization and recitation, and in fact, to know the law and then to use it. And to me, that's what lawyering is really about, as I know the law and I can use it on behalf of my client. And I think that we have positioned this course for that. There are going to be changes. I think we're going to see changes over the next couple of years to the UBE as it morphs into the next generation exam. This is really the leading edge of what I think we're going to see coming along as more and more courts and justices start weighing in on whether or not the bar exam is satisfactory to them. And each state was going to deal with this differently. So I think you want to be aware of this and just keep it out on the horizon. Hopefully all of you, as Amanda said, will pass the exam, become members of your bar, and then you're going to be asked to weigh in. The members of the bar in these various states have far more influence than people realize. When you get through the exam, I would hope it would be incumbent upon you to weigh into your state bar and say, hey, look, here's what the test was or wasn't, and here's what's going on. I also want to point out, we are going to add some additional product offerings, so stay tuned for those. We continue to innovate here. We had a great boot camp experience this weekend, and I want to just bring June back in and Tracy for a minute before we get to student calls. I have been doing boot camps, I don't know, June, maybe 10 years worth, something like that. I don't think that I've ever had a better boot camp from my standpoint than the one we just finished. It was extraordinary. We had a small group of people by design. We curated the students that we invited to attend. They got golden tickets. And it was an amazing experience from the teaching perspective. I just thought there was so much growth and development. What was your take? I can't even remember how many we've done, you and I, but it's been a lot. What was your take on this?
Not to, take away anything from other boot camps. I always love the boot camps. I think they're great. I love meeting everyone face to face. But this group was different. This group really wanted to be there. And they just were open. They took it in. They were excited. And you could just see their confidence soar from when they walked in to when they left. And like I said, I love meeting everyone. But this group was just amazing. You had to have been there. It was an energy. It was really
Yeah.
different and amazing.
Yeah. Tracy, this was your first boot camp, and you did some breakouts and worked on writing, but you were participant in all of it. What was the experience like from your standpoint?
I saw community building that actually wasn't expected, but it was so nice to see it. The respect in the room with everybody that was there, with the 3 teachers and each other. It just was an easy flow. I don't think I've ever been in a class where not one person fell asleep one time. I don't think that's ever happened. It certainly never was that way when I was preaching in a church or talking in a courtroom. People would be sleeping in the back, but everyone was very focused and wanting to learn the things that we were teaching. I thought it was a great experience, and I think it will reap huge benefits for the people that were there if they take what they learned there and bring it forward. So I was thrilled
Yeah,
to be part of it.
Yeah, we were glad. I was really glad to have Tracy and June there. It was a lot of fun. Let me tell you that we love the new location that we've got right outside Denver. It's in the Parker Pace Center. It was a great space. And we have tentatively scheduled our next boot camp for
November 3rd and 4th. November.
And if you go to our website, there is a link to the boot camp page. You can begin to apply for participation in that November boot camp. If you're taking the exam in February of 2024 or July of 2024, you should be at boot camp. I just think it's really that important. There is a $100 application fee, which is refundable to you if you choose not to sit for boot camp. It's also applied to your total tuition, and boot camp includes the photo reading course. So it's a terrific deal, and I'd encourage you to attend. So check it out. We're only going to take 15 students again. Typically our November boot camp, we get a lot more interest because of the timing. So early is better than later. And I would jump in there to lock down your seat as soon as you possibly can. We're very excited to run that boot camp.
We had quite a few students at boot camp who were photo readers, but they weren't like photo reading does not feel great in the beginning. You feel like you're not really doing anything. And that's how they felt coming in. And after boot camp, they were like, oh my gosh, now I know how to do it. Now I know I'm doing it correctly. That's the big thing. I don't think I'm doing it correctly. And walking out of boot camp, they're like, now I know I'm doing it correctly. And just being able to read an hour and a half outline in 15 minutes or so, just think about the time right there, the time that you had saved. And so my big takeaway was the students who weren't confident, now we're very confident that it works. 1, it works. And 2, okay, I know I'm doing it right.
Yeah, and here's kind of the proof of the pudding. At the end, we had students photo reading the entire multi-state torts outline. They read it, they mind mapped it, and then we gave them 10 brand new multi-state multiple choice questions on torts, and we timed them. They had 15 minutes to do 10 questions, so 90 seconds apiece. The average of the students in the room was 7 correct out of 10. 70% correct. Yeah. So to June's point, if you think photo reading might not work, these were people who came in, photo read for a day, learned photo reading, some of them for the very first time. And by the end of Saturday, we're getting 6 or 7 correct out of 10 questions that they had never seen before. So all I can tell you is it works. Trust the process. So anyway, Bootcamp, check it out. If you are taking the exam in 2024, make sure that you get in early. Again, we're only going to take 15 students. We really like the size of this. We like the ability to do the breakouts for writing and for mindset and for coaching. So there you go. All right. I've just got a couple of questions that have come in during the week because obviously we were out for boot camp. I want to quickly address those. One of them was actually an offshoot of boot camp. We had a student said, thanks for an amazing experience at boot camp. I'm feeling more inspired and invigorated as a result. I've been considering some essay coaching and was thinking about signing up for the personal writing workshop. Is that a good thing to do? And the answer is yes, it's absolutely worth doing. I think if you are not getting coaching and you don't want the full coaching package with me or Tracy or Brianna or Amanda, a good place to start is that 2-call session with Brianna. We call it the personal writing workshop. You register and you immediately get a link to Brianna's schedule. And the very first call, you're not doing anything. She's just explaining FLA to you. And then in her second call, you're going to do an essay and she's going to help you with the mechanics. We see that as being a big thing and a great step. So whether you went to boot camp or not, I would encourage everybody to get into the personal writing workshop. I know, Tracy, you were teaching the FLA system during boot camp. It makes a difference to people, doesn't it, to actually see the mechanics of it?
It does, especially the way we broke it down. We could see in some of the writing exercises how very quickly people caught on to how to do that. And I think they were gaining confidence by the hour. So yeah, it was good.
We encourage you to look at coaching. It does make a difference. We had a couple of former boot campers who came and spoke to our boot camp members, and they were both students that had been through that coaching process, and they talked about how important it was to their success. Be sure to check that out. We have a couple of questions this week about Florida specifically. I want to deal with those because there are some changes in the Florida exam. One student said, I just found out that trusts and UCC Article 3 and 9 are tested as multiple choice questions. Did you make any changes with respect to that? Yeah, we did. In your course, we have removed the essays for those 3 subjects. We have created multiple choice questions because there are no release questions in Florida for multiple choice. And they are now in your course, and you will find them under trusts, Article 3 and Article 9. And we have given you those to study, and we've made a change in your study guides. So I actually think we're probably the first bar review in the country to have made those changes. In the same vein, we had a student say that my lecture on criminal law did not mention Florida distinctions. How is criminal law tested? And the answer is we've got Florida civil procedure and criminal procedure. So the rules of the court, if you will, that's tested in multiple choice format. When it comes to criminal law, like homicide, robbery, arson, so on, that is not tested as a Florida-specific subject on that exam. It's tested as a multi-state essay subject. I know that's weird, but the reality is that when we've got a crim question and it's an essay, they're not testing Florida distinctions. So again, the course is current and correct for that exam. One of the interesting things that always happens when we get to this point, students start saying, there must be something I'm missing, or I found the thing that you missed. It's not likely. After 30 years, we pretty well got this down. And so if we're not putting it in, for the most part, it's because it's not something you have to worry about. So just follow your syllabus. If you're a Florida student, we will give you the Florida multiple choice in crim, and we will give you the essays that you have to have as well. And then in the same vein, but in Georgia, we had a student who said, I'm coming back. I'd registered for your course in 2022, but I didn't really use the course. And now, have there been any significant changes since then in the Georgia exam? The answer is no, there haven't been many changes in Georgia. So everything you've got, and this is true for UBE, California, and Florida, everything you've got is current and correct. And we spend a lot of time and energy to make sure that the course stays current with tens of thousands of pages. Sometimes we miss things, but for the most part, we're all up to speed. We had a question about MPTs. A student said, I appreciate how you lead us through the steps and compartmentalize the work and help me not to get overwhelmed. And then they said, does it matter if I mention case names? And in Xenophanes, obviously, we said you don't need it because you're talking to the jury. I would say that on a performance test, you probably want to use cases from the library. You want to use those kinds of case names. But when you're in an essay, you really don't need to use case names at all. No one's expecting you to have memorized the case law. Now, do you need to know Miranda or seminal landmark cases? But no one's expecting you to cite names. Would you agree, Tracy?
Yes, I would agree. You can state what the case stood for, then to cite names.
Yeah. And in a performance test, you're probably going to cite it if it's appropriate to the style of what you're writing. So if you're writing a brief to the court, you probably want to say, in Smith, this is the result, or this is the test. I think that it's important that people don't get hung up on the margins. And what I mean by that is the real key of a performance test is not whether or not you can set up the headings or the case captions. In fact, I would tell you to ignore all of that and not do it. And it's not a blue booking test. It's really a test of your ability to identify the particular principles in the library and apply the facts from the file to that. So that's really what's going to matter more than whether or not you mention a case name or not. There was one question about mind maps. There's a video at the very start of BarMaps that explains how to do that, and you should be able to download it and then create your mind maps. During boot camp, we did mind mapping, and then we did a gallery walk when we were done. Everyone looked at everybody else's mind map, and Tracy, you got to see some of those. What was your impression when you saw students doing their mind maps?
I saw light bulbs go off, and I saw creativity, and I saw color, and I saw hopefulness, because you take this huge body of knowledge, and when you can break it down and put it in a mind map and look at that, all the rest of it, if you've done your mind map correctly, can be put off to the side. And then in your last month and a half, which is close to where you are now, you can concentrate on those mind maps and trust them. And that's part of trusting the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And we saw people doing mind maps on computer. We saw them doing by hand. We saw people that had never mind mapped, and we saw people that had very extensive experience in mind mapping. So I think it makes a huge difference. Our guest speakers all concurred that mind mapping was an important part. And I think this is something you should be doing in terms of your note taking. So BarMaps, that's an additional product in which we create the base mind maps for you that you can then expand and build on the computer or copy and just make your own. Tracy, you and I had talked before we went on, and you said you wanted to just finish up with your reaction to boot camp or thoughts about boot camp. Anything you want to add about that process?
Boot camp is an investment, and we know, and we are sensitive to the fact that all of these things cost money, and money is tight. If you're not working yet as a lawyer, even if you are and you're trying to juggle lots of things, but boot camp is probably the most important investment that you can have, getting ready for the bar exam and getting ready for practice beyond the bar exam. If you look in the chat box, you'll see comments about what they got out of boot camp. I just encourage you to not worry about what you're spending right now to get through this process, because it's an investment in your future. And just like law school, that every time you turned around, you had to pay more money for tuition, you had to pay money for fees, you had to buy books, you had to do all this type. This is an investment. This is a class that is the most important class in front of you right now. It's the last time you'll have to take it if you trust the process and you do it well. But it's not something that you'll just come back from the bar exam, throw away all your books and say, okay, good, now I don't have any of that information that I need to keep going forward. This is really your foundational class for your profession. So talk to your parents, talk to your spouse, talk to your bank account, talk to your savings account, but invest in this program. For what it costs to come out to boot camp, I think the participants all thought that it was very much worth it. And
Yeah.
and that's the feedback
Yeah,
that I
and
got.
Yeah, I'd echo that. The other thing that we did that we have never done before is we offered monthly payment plans for boot camp. So you can register and pay over an 8-month period. So start paying now and have it virtually paid off by the time we get to the November boot camp. And we had plenty of students that did that. I really appreciate, Tracy, that you and June were there. You guys were terrific as breakout leaders and just helping build community. I see several of our boot campers on the call today. Thank you all for being there, and thanks to everybody that attended and participated. It was, as I said, probably the best group that I've ever had at a boot camp. And ultimately, what I'll tell you is that boot camp equals people passing the bar. We just see this over and over again. So if you're really serious about passing, I really think getting one of those 15 golden tickets really is a golden ticket. So try to get in there and jump in. We will put it in the notes when we publish. So if you're not a Celebration Bar Review student, you can still apply. However, we will hold your application until we make sure all of our students have the chance to apply. So that's where we are. We will be back next Wednesday. Hope everybody has a good Memorial Day holiday. I will say this around holidays, whether it's July 4th or Memorial Day, whatever it might be. Enjoy the day. It's okay to spend time with the family. It's okay to barbecue. It's okay to go to a ball game. It's okay to do those things that go in the world. But it's also okay that day to spend some time studying. The mistake that people make is when they try to combine the two. Do not bring your bar review books to the barbecue. It just doesn't work. They'll probably catch on fire and everyone will be unhappy with you anyway. So just compartmentalize a bit and I think it'll go better. June, do you have anything you want to wrap up with?
Take Monday, take a break. There's time. I know everyone feels like, oh my gosh, July is right. And it is, but it isn't. It's a lot of time. And there's time to do what you need to do. Like you have the time to do it. And just make it a priority. Because right now you can make this a priority and get where you need to be, or you cannot make it a priority and you'll keep repeating the cycle. So, take it.
And if you don't have barbecues planned, if you don't have things planned and you're off work on Monday and work has been getting in the way of you doing some really good quality time, here's a perfect day to settle down with your materials and do some really quality work.
Yeah, so I agree with Tracy. Do what you feel you need to do for you. If you need a little downtime, go have some downtime. If this is your downtime to really dig in and study, do that as well, because you'll feel good by giving yourself what you need.
That's great advice. Thank you both. Thank all of you who are on the call today. Appreciate it. We'll see you all next Wednesday. Hope everybody has a good weekend, a good study period, and a good week of study. And again, we'll see you in June. It will be June when we come back, won't it? Oh my gosh, that's crazy. All right. Take care, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.